Hi everyone, we're just waiting for 2 more minutes for participants to stream through. We'll be with you shortly.
And I was first driven to establish strategic advocacy for human rights Sahar in 2008 in the midst of a wave of hope and law reform for women's rights in Afghanistan after having spent a significant time in the country. We had an opportunity to change laws, rebuild the justice system, but we did not know what to do and how to do it. None of us were trained in legislative drafting. We were mostly young 20-something-year-olds, but we made it our goal and our responsibility undeterred to face up to this challenge. There is no program in a world that prepares lawyers and defenders to enter the halls of law and policy making. It is sophisticated, technical, and those who want to master it need to have the technical know-how and yet also be able to navigate a complex web of relationships and politics. For the most pressing human rights violation of all time, why aren't there more incubator programs to help us master and navigate this? In 2021, we decided to repurpose Sahar and piloted the Sahar Gender Justice Fellowship, the first accelerator program in the world to get more underrepresented gender diverse leaders trained and involved in law and policy making. We have built what we had wished for ourselves a decade ago. Law and policy have always been the domain of those sitting in governments. But our experience shows that until we become the authors of law and policy, only then can we shape and author it and mold it to meet the needs of our community. The question is, what does it take for a person to have command over law and policy making and feel the confidence to carry it through? Well, if we want a more equal and accessible system that works for survivors, we need to invest in the next generation of leaders and prepare them to mobilize their expertise to serve decision-making processes and exercise creativity and competence to reimagine a system that is more just.
I started my advocacy work at a pretty young age when I was still in school. Well, I found it quite upsetting that my region, my culture really undermines the rights of women and girls specifically. Being young, I felt actually scared. The odds were too many against me. I really took that bold step in 2016 to come out and be a team leader or champion for the inclusion of the rights of the minority groups.
I grew up in a small town in Buenos Aires, Argentina. My parents split up when I was 6 years old. My mother suffered gender-based violence, and I was like, I want to be there. I want to be in the line front, in the field. I want to defend women. In all my career, I have studied 6 years. I never have a teacher to talk about gender-based violence in the legal system.
Majority of our members feel lost when it comes to the judicial processes. Majority of the programs that have been initiated have been either biomedical interventions but not structural. Sahar was bold, and Sahar was kind of a mutual partner who was coming on board, we really felt that it was a strategic move for us to be bold also enough to face the challenges, and also to face the local administration and also the local duty bearers to engage or to strategize around the policy reviews.
Since 2016 up to the last year, we received 8,000 legal consultation. I mean, this is a huge problem we saw. There was one moment in that criminal process that was essential. The victim has to face the legal system with this psychological examination. This examination is very important for the results of the rule of the judge. We are trying to create in Argentina a public policy, and we are very grateful that Sahar is helping us. We started to see that in all the cases that we apply gender competence expertise, we get to another result. It was like, what's going on here? We build a new reality like a team. I actually want to say that Sahar is very amazing. I never see this kind of interventions. I can't explain how amazing it is to feel that.
Sorry, we had a technical difficulty. We're back on again. We maybe present Sarah from Sahar to open the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, sorry for the technical difficulty. Hi Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm Sahar Co-Executive Director, and I'm so excited and honored to be opening this event today, where we're launching our Sahar Accelerator that has the goal to resource human rights defenders and emerging leaders worldwide with the skills and tools to enter and participate in law and policy making to end SGBV and increase access to justice. We want to welcome today the respected ambassadors and heads of other important organizations and foundations for taking their time to attend the event, and supporters and board members of Sahar who have volunteered donating and open doors for us to make our work possible. We're holding this event today in the framework of the 16 Days of Activism campaign against gender-based violence around the world. The initiative that was launched in 2008 under the leadership of the UN Secretary General and is managed by UN Women calls on governments, civil society, women's organizations, young people, the private sector, media, and the UN system to join forces to address the global pandemic of violence against women and girls. We're so happy to be holding this event as we think that to really reform and change the gender justice landscape, we need to connect women and diverse civil society leaders with women political leaders in governments, the UN, and other institutions. And now I'm so excited and honored to introduce you to the incredible Natasha Latif, an award-winning human rights lawyer from Singapore and founder of Sahar, as she will be moderating this event and she will be guiding you and leading through the Sahar journey and the accelerator. And so you're going to understand how we got here where we are today. We're so grateful that you're part of our community, and I really hope you're going to enjoy the event. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone, and very, very welcome to everybody who's joined us. When it came to this event, I so much wanted to moderate it because these are the people that I live for. They are my mission. They inspire me. I'm so honored to work with them every day. And so in this event, I'm going to be having a dialogue with each one of them. They come from places from Singapore to Argentina, Colombia, Afghanistan, Kenya, and you will hear from them what it takes for them to enter and navigate law and policy making spaces to end sexual and gender-based violence. But first, before we start, let's just set the stage of what the problem is right now when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence around the world. And for this, I'm going to be turning to my colleague who's working with me from Singapore, Lara Danani. She's an aspiring human rights lawyer. She's just graduated, and we're gonna have her take us through some of the key issues that we are facing in the world today. So introducing Lara.
Hi everyone, my name is Lara.
Hi, Lara. So Lara, I think first we wanted to kind of just take the audience through the status of SGBV laws around the world. One of the key things in Sahar's mission is really to change law and policy, and well, yes, rape and sexual violence is prohibited across the world. So, but what is so wrong about the definitions that exist, the procedures that exist, that's really preventing survivors from getting justice?
Well, this depends from country to country, but I'll highlight two examples. One relating to how we define a crime, and two on barriers to reporting. Let me start with the definition of rape. In some countries, such as Georgia and Kazakhstan, rape is defined by use of force and not by absence of consent. However, not all rapes occur through violence. For example, sexual violence occurring within familial or trusted relationships occur over time and through psychological coercion instead of physical force. In these cases, victims and especially children tend to submit without physical resistance. As such, a definition of rape that is premised on use of force fails to account for many situations of sexual violence where use of force, physical force, is not particularly pronounced even where consent is compromised. So, how we define rape determines victims who we include and victims who we exclude.
And so if we're not defining rape by the use of force, I mean, what would an ideal provision look like? Like what are some of the things that Sahar is fighting for in terms of change to the definition?
Yep. In 2020, Sahar participated in a call by the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women on rape laws across the world. Out of that study, a UN model law on rape was conceived. So, for instance, rather than defining rape as a use of force, Article 620C of the UN Model Law on Rape centers rape around the lack of consent. Lack of consent is presumed when the perpetrator is in a position of power, trust, influence, or dependency over the victim and may have taken advantage of that position to force participation. The distinction here is that it recognizes that force is one of the several ways rape can happen.
Besides the way in which rape is defined, are there any other procedural aspects of the law as it currently stands that we really need to change?
Certainly. We know that around the world, underreporting is a serious issue. One barrier to reporting is the statutory limitation period. And this period is a legally defined timeframe within which a person can bring forth a legal action or file a lawsuit. Once this period expires, the individual loses the right to start legal proceedings regarding a specific claim or offense. And for example, in Nepali law, complaints in rape cases had to be filed within 1 year of the incident, and shockingly, until 2018, this period was only 35 days.
And why is that a problem, that it's not longer?
Well, survivors often face stigma and shame, preventing them from reporting within such a limited time frame. And many survivors also need medical attention due to STDs, pregnancies, or injuries. And some need time to seek help and speak to a friend or a confidant. And some may face family pressures or retaliation by perpetrators. So a rigid reporting window does not account for these realities that they face.
But some may argue, I mean, we have laws because we have to regulate when a crime can be reported, how a crime is to be prosecuted. Is this going to just open the door for claims to be made 20, 30 years down the line? Isn't that a problem?
So,
meaning
sorry.
when there are reports of rape coming 20, 30 years down the line, wouldn't that result in perhaps some sort of disadvantage to accused persons who say, well, victims are coming out quite much later down the line?
Yes, that is one approach. However, Sahar strongly advocates for a survivor-centered approach to justice. And this means designing laws that align with the realities faced by victims, taking into account factors which I described.
Can you bring out another issue that often comes up in rape prosecutions that make it very hard for victims to report?
Okay. A key one is retaliation. In many cases, victims face pressure or retaliation from their own family, the perpetrators, unknown individuals, and even the police. And this retaliation can take various forms, such as verbal threats, beatings, intimidation, stalking outside school or workplaces, persistent phone calls, freak accidents, and even murder.
And in these cases, I mean, we know world round there are protection laws that exist to prevent these things from happening to rape victims. So why is this still a problem that we need to work on?
So these laws are designed to protect victims, yes, theoretically. However, in practice, victims often bear the responsibility of initiating an application for protection, and the burden is on them to seek safeguards.
How do we change this?
Sahar is advocating for the onus to shift to the state, and this means that during the investigation or prosecution, the state should proactively assess whether the victim has protection needs and ensure that state services, NGOs, and other relevant entities are coordinated to fulfill those needs. And this shift would place the responsibility where it belongs, with the authorities to safeguard those who have already suffered enough.
Thank you very much, Lara, for highlighting these three key issues. You mentioned first thing, the definition of rape excludes victims. The second is that with such short statutory limitation periods, many victims who find the courage much later on to report rape find themselves just excluded from reporting and prosecuting their cases. And then third thing is such a big thing, retaliation, reprisals. It goes hand in hand with most complaints that victims come up with. And so we know that though laws do exist to prosecute rape, to prohibit rape, to protect victims, but we understand from your intervention that it's just not enough because it's not designed for survivors. Thank you very much, Lara, for your contribution, and we are now going to have a dialogue with some of human rights defenders from different parts of the world, starting with Nora. Now, Nora Wakesa is such an amazing, I mean, she has the brightest smile whenever I talk to her. It starts from one end to her cheek to the other. She's young, she's passionate. I mean, she goes in all heart. And so it was no difficulty for us to think, well, we've got to fund and support and accompany a person like her in during the fellowship. So I'm so excited to present Nora on stage to talk more about her work in Kenya with gender-based violence victims. Hi, Nora. Happy to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Natasha.
Nora, so first, I mean, you come from Bungoma, Kenya. It's such a context of its own. Tell us more about the situation of gender-based violence in your county.
Hi, I'm Nora. I come from Goma County, which is in the West Africa, and it's a neighbor of Uganda. We have a big problem in sexual and gender-based violence in this region. The national average of SGBV in the population is 13%, and we are at 23% according to the Kenya Democratic Health Survey in 2022. 62% of the Bungoma women have experienced physical and sexual violence. In 8 years between 2016 and 2023, there are near 9,000 cases of SGBV for minor girls. This means half of all average sexual violence which is reported nationally is happening in this region of which is Bungoma County. Yeah.
Yeah, the situation of sexual and gender, I mean, when you all came to me and told me what the statistics were like, I was really shocked. And I know that the amount of services and work that's available for survivors is also very much under-resourced. Why did you apply to this fellowship particularly?
I applied to Sahar because I wanted to bring change to this community. Throughout my life, I've seen many women and girls struggling, and personally, as a psychologist, I know how to handle people, and I know how to talk to them and through their traumas. And I became a paralegal as well, and I mentor people and talk to them through their struggles and put myself in their shoes, and yeah.
You mentioned that you are working with paralegals and you're training them up. I mean, who are these paralegals? Who are you working with to be a response to survivors of gender-based violence?
The paralegals are the people who trained, and these are the members of these communities. Like in Bungoma County, we have 9 sub-counties. Personally, we had 33 paralegals, but we managed to train them, and we selected 15 paralegals in the training. And of their ages, they are 20 to 30 years, and a few are of and out of the 15, there are 6 who are survivors of gender-based violence that we train, and they really help out in these sub counties.
Well, it's really incredible that you even have survivors who have joined your training and are now becoming paralegals. And I want to talk to you more about that. But first, I think in many countries, paralegal work in the community is not known. So what role do paralegals play in the justice system?
Personally, in our counties, it's hard to find pro bono lawyers. Now we use these paralegals as we have trained them how to record, how to handle the cases, how to respond, and how to ask the questions. we put them in these areas because they are well trusted by the people, and they know how to talk to them, and it's easier for them because the people trust them, and they are reliable in areas that we are not able to access.
And how does this Sahar Fellowship help you in achieving your mission to train more paralegals and make sure that cases of gender-based violence are documented?
Sahar helped us in documenting the cases, and first and foremost, the Sahar helped us in to know which questions to ask, how to pass through the how to talk well with the survivors on how to handle them through the case, and how to document in every step, like in taking the details on how, when, what, like, and most and foremost, first and foremost, the how to ask the victim. You shouldn't you shouldn't just ask you shouldn't wait for the victim to tell you what's happening. You're the one to ask the questions so that the victim can open up to you. Without that, there's no way you're going to get all the information, because they are traumatized, they have fear, and if you don't ask them some questions, it's going to just go away, and you're not going to get all the information.
And like you said before, some of the survivors that you work with, you took them and you empower them to become paralegals.
Yeah.
Tell us about one successful case of that sort. I think it's really incredible that survivors are being advocates.
Yeah. Personally, I had a victim. I would not say the name, but this woman had a husband and two kids, and the husband passed away, and the brother-in-laws wanted to take away the property of the woman, but we came in, and we helped her through the journey. We took the case to the court. We helped her recover the land. We helped her through with the case, and right now she has the land back. Her children came back home. They were really traumatized, and through the talk and mentorship of Sahara and Gumzo, we helped her, and personally right now she's in a good state.
And she's now become a paralegal, so
Yeah,
she's
she's
also able
yeah,
to.
yes, she's among the paralegals that we have,
Very
and
good.
she's growing right now. Her life has changed, and she really mentors people, and using her example, we talk to others, and because of her, many people come and join us because they see this change, and it's not about what you went through, and that's the main thing that we always talk. We always tell them it's not about what you went through, it's about what you can do, what you can change, how you can fix this. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know by the way you speak to your community and also survivors. It's not about what you went through. It's about what
Yeah.
you can do to change. That's
Yeah.
such an empowering way of working with survivors and including them in your work. I mean, congratulations so much for all the incredible things that you are all doing, really.
Thank you.
And thank you, Nora, for giving us your oral presentation about your work. And we will round back to you later during Q&A.
Okay, thank you.
The next person I want to introduce is Jimena Gibertoni from Argentina. So she's a human rights lawyer. She's the founder of the Feminist Lawyers Network. And to be very honest with you, I was when she's actually a twice awarded fellowship, together with her counterpart Yamila, also from Argentina, also a human rights lawyer. I mean, we had to award them twice the fellowship just because they are just, they're just creative, they're just out there. And I must say to you, when Jimena first joined the first fellowship, she even hired an English tutor so that she could participate in meetings with me. So, these are the things that give me so much of energy. Like, there are people who are so much in desire to connect, to learn, to exchange. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the Argentinian feminist movement. You guys are doing excellent work. So actually, I also learn a lot from the cases that you are taking, Jimena. So welcome, Jimena, to this event. Um, we start with the bad news. No, what's the status
Yes.
of gender-based violence in Argentina?
Yes. Hi, Natasha. Hi, everyone. Well, here in Argentina, the last year, 2022, we have in the Supreme Court, we have an office of gender-based violence, and we have more than 10,000 files and complaints. In Argentina, we are better than years before, but actually we have femicide every 35 hours. Since we create the network, we have been 2015, we have been handling like 8,000 consultations and calls from gender-based violence, and the last year, 200.
Yeah, it is shocking because people look to Argentina's laws and legal frameworks as being one of the most progressive.
Yes.
I also studied the Latin America when I was learning about changing laws and frameworks. And you were twice awarded the fellowship, and this time when you applied, you came to us with a specific problem and a specific solution. Tell us more about that.
Okay. Well, victims of gender-based violence are subjected by the court to psychological examinations during the process, the judicial process, when they have sexual violence, when they suffer sexual violence. Oftentimes, these examinations lack of gender perspective and are usually re-traumatizing, and they don't have protocols according to gender-based violence or these kind of crimes. We are pushing a policy in Argentina to change this situation and this reality, and to get free access to experts in crimes of gender-based violence according to international laws and the commitment that Argentina has with this subject.
So you're pushing for a specific policy change, but I mean, what's really practical difference that's really going to make?
Well, a lot, because, Shamila and I are, for example, to give you an example, are represented a long-term case of sexual abuse and rape. In this case, these two girls had 13 and 17, and during 4 years, their father has been abusing from them. When they get to the judicial process and they had the examination, the psychologists make terrible questions, like gender stereotypes questions that are against every protocol in this kind of trauma or sexual abuse. Actually, for example, they ask about their past, about their behavior, about their, for example, their physical looking like, and the conclusions they arrived in these cases, it was like their personality was too calm to have suffered sexual violence, and that they found the girls dissociated. And this is very important because this is very important because in this kind of situations, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes. Sorry, I lost the sign. In this kind of situations, the big problem is that in criminal cases, this is essential for the result. If you want to get a conviction, it's very important to have psychological expert trained in sexual violence. That's when Jamila and I decided to intervene in this case. We asked the court a second report, and this time we asked the help. We hired a psychological expert in sexual violence, and we arrived to a different result. What the psychologist said, it was like a mechanism to survive to that kind of behavior from their parents. We are talking situation that, for example, the father was drugging the girls so she can fall asleep and then commit the abuse. So they were suffering a lot of psychological pressure, manipulation, a lot of things, and their personality adjusted to that situation to survive.
Yeah, I mean, it's really horrific that in such cases, you still need to prove so much in order for a judge to convince a judge that indeed what your clients went through was indeed sexual abuse. If you did not intervene, I mean, how would the court have decided?
Well, actually, in all the cases, in this kind of cases, would have acquitted the father. That's the main situation, because 10 years ago in Argentina, nobody was going to make a file about sexual violence because the system is not friendly with the victims. But after the feminist movement put this situation in the public agenda, women's and LGBT community started to make complaints and file, and they go to the system, to the judicial system, searching a solution, like to talk about their trauma. And what actually happens is that this kind of examination that is essential for the result, because these kind of felonies are in private occurs in private. They always have acquitted the perpetrator. So we have noticed that if we intervene with a professional that is trained in gender perspective, we actually can get a different result. And we saw it in this case particularly. But I can give you another example to show the difficulties in the practice. We have a client that used to work for the government, and she was raped in the government offices by other employee, and she couldn't tell the situation, not even her husband, for 5 years. When she saw again her perpetrator, she actually started to talk. But when we make the file and the complaint, we have to prepare her for several months with a particular expertise to get to this examination and avoid the re-victimizing questions.
And Jimena, I mean, you do this one case to the next case to the next case. It's really tiring. So that's why you want to change things at a systemic level. I mean, how are you going to convince your government, also given that the change in government has been actually quite negative to what you're trying to achieve? What are the steps that you take? Like, tell people, how do you change policy in Argentina?
Well, in Argentina, anything is easy, so we are used to that. And every movement in human rights in our country is not because of the governments wants to do it. It's because the feminist movement and the society has pushed that movements or requirements. And we do also the same. We push the boundaries into our system in the judicial process. The first thing we have to do is to show there is a problem. And here we have a problem. We are analyzing in Sahar Fellowship 10 cases of sexual violence. In these 10 cases, we have searched the findings and the highlightings about the difference between an expert training with gender perspective and a psychologist who hasn't. And the result is very, very evident. So what we are trying to do is, first, find the problem. Second, show the problem. In this case, we are reporting the cases. And when we finish this report, we are going to talk with the society, with the ONG from Argentina, the other networks of lawyers, and we are going to present this policy with the change that the system requires to the government, but also to the Congress. So we know it won't be easy. Nothing in Argentina is easy, but we are going to push this and we are going to try to do this because that's how we get the changes in our society according to our international standards in Argentina.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You and Yamila are doing really incredible work. And to the audience, we have videos of these fellows that's going to come up by 10 of December. So definitely do stay tuned. Thank you, Jimena and Yamila, for your presentation. We've seen here with Nora, she comes from rural Kenya. She's working through community structures to implement as well as influence law and policy change. It's happening at a very local level because it's about taking standards and laws that are passed nationally and making sure that they're not just sitting on the shelves, but they're being used. And unless civil society leaders like Nora use the law and report back to the government as to the use of the law, we're not really going to see change. So that's why Nora's work on the ground at the very grassroots level really make a difference. And when we move to Argentina, Jimena, that's really incredible work as well, because she's aiming for systemic change at the national policy level. She's tired of taking cases one by one in every single court proceeding to argue the same thing to the judge, that there is a need for gender competent psychological examinations to be admitted as evidence. So she's looking at changing things at the very national level. So just these two presentations, they show you that law and policy making is not I said it is hard, but it's not impossible, and it takes a bit of creativity and a bit of courage to get it done. Now I want to introduce you to Hagin, who is from Bungoma County in Kenya. Hagin is also yet another incredible person. And when he was applying for the fellowship, at every stage he was like, even if I don't get the fellowship, can we still partner up? Can I still talk to you about our work, our cases? Can we still be partners? And he was just in contact with me all the time. And during the interview, gosh, I saw such a passion, a sturdy character, so democratic, like bringing his community, training his community to do the things that he's doing. So I'm very, very proud to be having Hagin for this presentation. And I know, Hagin, you're calling from a blackout in Kenya right now, both you and Nora. So I thank you all very much for finding a way to charge your computer just to participate in this event.
Yeah.
Hagin, let's start with, Nora talked a little bit about the rates of sexual and gender-based violence in your county. It's a GBV hotspot. It is such a serious issue. Maybe describe to the audience a little bit about why Bungoma County is such a peculiarly high rate of sexual and gender-based violence.
Thank you, Natasha, and the other participants. I'm Hagin. Indeed, Bungoma, we are a cultural and traditional area, and this has really played a key role in terms of the violence that women and girls continue to experience in our region. Bungoma County still has deep-rooted culture and societal norms that really defines what a woman or a girl should be in their own aspect of tradition. And this has also hindered in terms of women and girls reporting of these cases because of the stigma that they feel they will be faced with when reporting these cases.
And you applied for this fellowship particularly with one problem, and you want to achieve one key thing. What is it?
We did apply for the fellowship, to be part and parcel of this fellowship, because we wanted to have a community-owned security response strategy, in the sense that bearing in mind the uniqueness of Bungoma County, just to note that Bungoma County has featured as the leading county in Kenya for 2 consecutive years in regards to SGBV cases against women, and also early teenage pregnancies from of girls from even at the lower levels of schooling. So we wanted to come up with a response strategy that is community owned, that everybody will appreciate their role, from stakeholders to other collective CSOs and other persons within the justice system in regards to response to SGBV cases.
Many people say, like, what's the point of passing more laws and policies? For you, why is it still so much necessary for you to have a Bungoma-led policy?
For us to have a Bungoma-led policy, we own the fact that our county has been in the limelight for a very long time, and we also own the fact that we have different structures. For us in Bungoma, as I have said, we are we are still under societal norms and culture, and these present a unique font for Bungoma. So we wanted us to engage different stakeholders, from the ministries, the government officials, to the community opinion leaders, to the community elders, to even the women and girls themselves, for them to understand the unique the situation that we are in currently, and also to appreciate the fact that when you have a policy in place, everybody will be accountable. And bearing in mind, response to violence is not a one stakeholder affair, but a collective responsibility for all. We thought that was the right way to do it.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway you're saying is the policy is community centered, and it encourages collective responsibility. And so you're working towards a policy to bring every duty bearer together into a mechanism and fold to stop and to prevent and to redress sexual and gender-based violence. Hagen, I mean, over the last few months, just together with you, we've worked on some very horrific cases of sexual and gender-based violence, and it's not simply a private affair happening by a perpetrator within the family against the victim, but it involves state parties, the police, and the healthcare system. Can you just describe at least one or two examples of the kind of cases that you handle so that people get an understanding of why this policy is very important?
Okay. Unfortunately, we do record quite a number of cases. Just to take back a few months ago, we did record a case of a transgender woman who was just on her errands within one of our local markets, but on that she was taken to a police station by people of the community, with the impression that she had cross-dressed and not representing her sex, her gender well. So at the police station, she was emotionally disgraced by the police officers and the members of the community by stripping her of her clothes just to get her identity. And actually, she had to call of her friends to bring her clothes from her home, for her to dress the way that their community and also the police officers felt it was proper for her to dress. She had to undergo a lot of psychosocial support counseling from us because of the trauma that she had gone through. She went into Comunicado for some time because of the trauma, and with a lot of counseling from the partners that we have on board, she has been able to walk that journey through. We also recorded, just as Nora said, a case of a lady who was widowed, and after a month of her husband's demise, the brothers came in and really messed up her house. That is including even breaking her furniture in the home, and also claiming ownership of the land that the late husband had left for her. With their children, we had to free the children because the children had seen horrific instances from the brothers threatening the mother of early marriage, not early marriage, but rather inheritance, her inheritance with one of them, and also the children being told how they were not members of the family and how the brothers were suspicious about their lineage. We also had the brothers really harassing the woman by cutting off the farm products that she had planted, and also just threatening her. But this woman felt intimidated. She couldn't even run to the police because of the locality. The brothers were origins from that village, and she was a foreigner married to this land of ours, which is Bungoma. So she had no one to go to. She had to come to us. Took her through the counseling. We took her through the courts, whereby she got a restraining order. She also got a protection order against the brothers from harassing her. So we have had very many, very various instances that really goes to the point that government stakeholders and also government officers and agencies can also be part and parcel of the perpetrators of violence within our societies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Hagen, for sharing that. You are both actually doing really incredible work, and thank you for your presentation.
Yes.
With Hagen's case, what Hagen and Nora are working on is policy at a very local level, and they want to make sure that it's community owned, because the perpetrators of violence are also the police and healthcare workers, and so the question that they are trying to do is how through policy and how through this mechanism they can bring these indeed perpetrators into the fold and have them understand what their responsibilities are to protect and to safeguard gender-based violence survivors. And with that, we're going to move now leftwards all the way to Colombia, where we'll have Catalina, who's also one of Sahar's program and case manager, talk a little bit more about an intervention that she's making. So Catalina is particularly has a particularly interesting background because besides being a human rights lawyer, she's also trained in criminology. So one of the reasons why we were so happy to have her join us was it's an area, it's a discipline that we also want to integrate in our work, as it's very important for us to understand what are the motivations and desires that move and make perpetrators commit very, very brutal forms of violence. So with Catalina, she's actually leading a very important intervention to submit an advisory opinion to the Special Jurisdiction for Peace in Colombia in the macro case number 11. Catalina, tell us first more about what the macro case number 11 is about.
Thank you, Natasha. So the macro case 11 is about gender-based atrocities committed during the armed conflict in Colombia between 1957 and 2016. We will focus specifically in the crimes committed by members of the FARC, which was an illegal armed group in Colombia during that time. The conflict led to, imagine, Natasha, more than 31,000 cases of sexual gender-based violence. These crimes include sexual violence, reproductive violence, enforced prostitution, sexual abuse, and torture. Crimes were also specifically committed against those of different sexual orientation and gender identity, and the violence was intentionally brutal. The Colombian government signed a peace agreement with FARC in 2016. However, the extent of the violence was so pervasive that the special court called the Special Jurisdiction for Peace was established to try the perpetrators.
So, in essence, you're submitting an advisory opinion to a court that's going to be deciding on this very horrific and long-standing war in Colombia. With this, you said 31,000 cases of sexual, and I mean, this is unimaginable and truly, truly tragic. What are the key areas of Sahar's submission? Like, what are the things that you are focused on for the court to understand?
Well, Sahar's mandate requires us to intervene in spaces where international law is being developed on gender-based violence. We have a specific focus on sexual violence because it is so pervasive. It is used as a tool during conflict, and also international law and standards on this is relatively new. Therefore, our key focus areas are: one, the application of international law on sexual violence during armed conflict; two, the motivation of FARC from criminological perspective; and three, our recommendations on reparations to the victims.
You mentioned that one of the key focus areas is motivations of FARC to commit those acts of sexual violence, and you're bringing to the court's attention the criminological perspective. To those of us who never got the chance to study this at the master level, I forgot to add, what is that perspective?
We try to focus on the ideologies that are patriarchal, racist, and militaristic in nature. So, sexual violence against women and gender diverse persons was committed for revenge, to punish the victim or take advantage of a lawless situation, And for example, in 2002, the FARC members gave warning and threatened the young women in a specific town in Colombia not to associate with the state army or otherwise they would be declared military targets. So those who did not comply with this warning ended up being raped or sexually abused as a punishment. I am trying to show to the court that armed groups use sexual violence to intimidate and to control the civilian population, seeking to keep communities subdued. By attacking the women of a vulnerable population, the perpetrators seek to demoralize and to dehumanize the population, weakening their will to oppose. This is how armed groups deprive populations of their rights, dignity, property, lands, and homes.
That's so interesting, Catalina. I mean, as we were discussing this case, often in national courts, we look at the intent of the perpetrator. We're not so concerned about their motivations, what they think about the roles and the positions of women or other members of the community. Um, why do you think that criminology, why is it that the motivations, that perspective is important for the court?
Because justice requires that we understand the causes and also the motivation of violence. Men are not naturally violent. They become violent because of out of certain social, economic, and cultural conditions, behavioral patterns, and also risk factors. Therefore, sexual violence in conflict is a result of perpetrators within a specific social and cultural environment where sexual violence is seen, heard, and also used to advance military objectives. And we are highlighting this in our advisory opinion.
Yeah, I like that you particularly said that men are not or perpetrators are not naturally violent, but they become violent through certain conditioning.
Yeah.
And I guess this turns to my last question. The war in Colombia is over. Why is it necessary now to, people say, dig up the situation, open the wounds, and revisit these incidences?
Well, we know from history that conflicts can repeat, but to prevent conflicts from repeating, we have to work towards comprehensive reparations where truth, justice, guarantee of non repetitions are decisive. Truth telling requires us to understand perpetrators' ideologies and the risk factors. And this is how we can push for social and cultural change to respect the human rights of women. Such change will contribute to long-term stabilization of affected communities.
Thank you so much, Catalina,
Thank you,
for your
Natasha.
presentation on Colombia. Well, you heard from Catalina. So from Jimena to Catalina, Jimena is working on policy change at the national level. She's going to put forward a proposal. Jimena and Yamil is going to put forward a proposal to their government to change policy. What Catalina is showing is another way of changing laws and policies, particularly international law, and setting international legal precedent. Something that is set in Colombia is definitely going to have a ripple effect on our interpretations of international law globally. And so her intervention at the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, a court in Colombia, is absolutely essential. And now we're going to turn to Isabella. Isabella Mwangi is a human rights lawyer in Kenya. And of course, when she applied for the fellowship, hers was a clear-cut case. I mean, this woman has been appointed by the government into the Legislative Reform Committee to survey the laws on sexual violence and, of course, ancillary legislation. She's a brilliant mind. She's done several workshops for Sahar, and I have myself benefited a lot. I think the African women's movement, the feminist movement, as well as the legal movement, has so much to teach the rest of the world with its community-centered approach. So Isabella, I'm so happy to have you here, your bright legal mind, to present what's happening in Kenya. Let me start with the purpose. Like, why did the Ministry of Justice decide to set up a law reform committee?
Thank you very much, Natasha, and I am much obliged to be able to take part in this very meaningful conversation and webinar. So in Kenya, our Chief Justice is a woman who has been both in government and civil society. And her passion is truly to ensure that there is justice for marginalized communities, specifically women and children. And so she has been at the forefront of ensuring that children and women are able to claim, they understand their rights and they're able to claim their rights. But in the process, we are a country that over the years, incidences of gender-based violence have been growing, specifically intimate partner violence, rape, and defilement. And in 2006, we had a law was enacted, which is the Sexual Offences Act 2006, which for us was a fantastic step in regards to convicting offenders or perpetrators of violence against women. However, because initially anyway we just used to use the penal code, and the penal code was very ambiguous, and the punishment never used to commensurate the offense and the damage that and the ripple effect that especially sexual violence has on women. And so when she came to being the first female Chief Justice in Kenya, one of her aspirations or vision was to review the Sexual Offences Act and the attendant laws. And this is because over the practice since 2006 to date, which is about 16 years of using this law, we have realized that the law is fantastic, but there are also a lot of gaps within the law. And one of the most glaring gaps was the law was truly not responding to the lived realities of women. And this is where we say that the laws that we develop are not gender neutral. They don't take into consideration. And unfortunately, the ripple effect was there was a bias towards towards women and girls, and boys always, and especially the young boys, always ended up being punished for acts that were not even very well articulated in the law. And over and above that, we have had judiciary, what we call judiciary activism. In what I think is judiciary activism, they have been pushing back on the minimum mandatory sentencing. And the question they've been asking is, fine, we are giving people 14 years. Why hasn't the incidences of sexual violence reduced? Because if I'm punishing you to deter, why is the deterrence not happening? And for me, I think that that's almost a very false narrative in terms of some of these things actually social inclination. There's a lot of social norms around how communities live. And the law that isn't there to cure everything, but the law is there for the woman or any human being to be able to claim their rights and be able to access justice. And the third reason why we are reviewing this particular legislation is to now take into consideration the trends that are happening. Of course, what used to happen in 2006 is not what's happening here, and also to align it with the regional and international frameworks, and just to make sure that we are developing a law with a survivor-centered approach. That is actually the underlying foundation of wanting to review this particular law.
Thank you so much for that overview. It's really incredible to see women at the helm of lawmaking. And I think your work in particular is outstanding. And you come with so much of experience litigating cases after cases in the court. And so you're definitely going to bring that into the review process. One thing you mentioned, that the law, whilst greatly drafted in many ways, were not addressing the lived realities. Some of these lived realities are women who are marginalized and other marginal groups, including men and boys who are also oftentimes victims of sexual and gender-based violence, How are you including marginalized groups to making sure that their voices are represented when you are presenting your proposals to the Reform Committee?
Thank you for that question. So, for us, the Constitution has clearly laid out who is a marginalized group. This includes women, youth, children, and indigenous women, as well as communities. So that is the working of what we understand as marginalized group. Of course, over the years, there has been the issue of diversity and identification. But as the Kenya is currently, in fact, our last president said, for us, that's a non-issue. We first need to put food on people's tables before we start getting into bedroom matters. And so when we are talking about marginalization, this is the understanding. So how we ensuring that the laws are marginalized is we are now critically analyzing what we have learned from the experience of using the laws that exist. One, it's very clear that whilst the Sexual Offences Act is progressive, the other laws, we have about 19 to 25 laws that speak to or should be read with the Sexual Offences Act. But whether they're aligned, that is the biggest problem. So that is number one. And so the issue of marginalization does not come out very clearly. Like our Education Act is very clear on teacher, student, learners relationship, but that's something that came on way, way later. But then we have the gray area of sexual harassment in higher learning institutions. And in as much as they are not children, they are vulnerable adults, right? Because they're between the age of 18 to 25. What then happens when your lecturer and a student are engaging? And you see, our Sexual Offences Act is almost very silent on sexual harassment. That also in other spaces within the work. So those are some of the things that we're taking into consideration in trying to understand what are these trends, what are these things that were missed in the first time when the law was being framed. Secondly, it's the issue of children, and I am sure this perhaps is something that's not just unique to Kenya. Our sexual debut as a country is quite low, but it's something I think has been going on, but coming from within the African context, it's something we rarely want to accept. That the children are having sex at a younger age. We have always imagined this is the northern global issue and not necessarily the southern global. But the reality is, just as my colleagues Huggins and Nora said, they come from a county where they record the highest number of teenage pregnancies. Where are they coming from? And so we are very cognizant of the fact that the law is silent on matters of child-to-child sexual engagement. It is a crime, but to what extent? Yeah. So often you'd find the boy is the one sent to a postal institution and the girl is left free. And as such, the issue of discrimination started arising. And then currently we are pushing the narrative that gender-based violence in itself is discrimination. And that has to come out very clearly in the laws that we are currently looking into. And discrimination to the point where you're not just discriminating the larger group, you're discriminating the marginalized. And so we are trying to make that very clear that this type of discrimination excludes a lot of people who are already facing other intersections, that the continued exclusion of the marginalized continues to further push them away from the society, and as such, their lived realities are not articulated. There is no way you're going to say in Kenya we are handling issues of gender-based violence with a record time of 30 days, but we know that in certain parts of this country, including where Nora and Huggins come from in their remote, courts are not available, police stations are far, hospitals are far. And so we are just trying to bring some level of congruence and comprehension on what that looks like using the law as a tool for bringing order, but also as an advocacy strategy.
Wow, that's so incredible. I mean, you've just, in this short space of time, brought so much of nuance to our understanding of how law can also be used as a coercive tool to discriminate. And at the same time, there are gray areas when it comes to sexual intercourse as to sexual violence. And you need minds to really think about how can we regulate this without incarcerating children and punishing people in a way that would be considered to be not commensurate with the gravity of the offense. So I think you've brought these incredible perspectives. Thank you so much, Isabella, for coming and presenting this to us.
Welcome.
And with this, we have to present our last fellow. Her name is Angela Hedayat. And she's a special one because she comes from Afghanistan, where there is now reigning a gender apartheid. When I when I was interviewing Angela for the fellowship, what struck me so much is that she had to, like so many human rights defenders, pick up her bags and flee all of a sudden, and start a new life somewhere, but at the same time still have the patience and the energy and the vision to continue to help women back home in Afghanistan through her fellowship. So thank you, Angela, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Angela, let's start first with just, Afghanistan has been in the news for the last 2 years, but tell us more about what's happening on the ground with gender-based violence.
Thank you, Natasha. Unfortunately, I can say Afghanistan is a country where being a woman is a crime, and women have no fundamental rights now. Since the Taliban took over Afghanistan in August 2021, they have enforced several restrictions and abused the fundamental rights of women and girls. During 2 years, they issued over 50 decrees, guidelines, instructions, and prohibitions that violate women's and girls' human rights. For example, I can say they closed institutions aimed at addressing violence against women. They dissolved the family court on Ministry of Women's Affairs. The Ministry of Vice and Virtue enforced mandatory veiling, checking on women's movement, prohibiting women's work in certain sectors. Now, women are not allowed to participate to law, go to court, or work as a judge. This means survivors of gender-based violence are not able to appoint women lawyers to represent them. Also, gender segregation policies make it difficult for women to access help and legal protection. Many women's shelters have been shut down already. And also, offenders feel that they can commit violence without any consequences.
Thank you, Angela, for that overview. Why did you apply for fellowship? Afghanistan is a lawless situation now. What can you really do, and how are you using the fellowship to do that?
Yeah, thank you. I applied for the fellowship to support and advocate for women human rights defenders in Afghanistan, to have safety and protection. Also, I want through Sahar's platform, I hope to provide access to resources like research materials, funding, and platform to raise Afghan women's voice regarding ongoing human rights crisis. With the hope it will help the United Nations and other international authorities put pressure on Taliban's gender apartheid and misogynistic system.
Why, to those who don't understand why Taliban are particularly targeting and persecuting human rights defenders, can you give some explanation?
Yeah, thank you. Now human rights defenders are being persecuted by Taliban in Afghanistan due to their advocacy for human rights, gender equality, freedom of expression, and justice. Also, human rights defenders are documenting violation, providing legal aid, advocating for marginal groups, and as well pushing for reforms. It makes them targets to persecution. Also, the Taliban's action and policies have historically demonstrated disregard for human rights. Also, I can say their restrictions and also their anti-human rights ideology conflict with the work of these defenders. Additionally, I can say the Taliban's intolerance of dissent is abuse of a desire to maintain control over the population.
Can you take us through one case that you're handling that really shows what this persecution is about?
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, actually, I'm conducting interviews with women human rights defenders and journalists who are facing risk due to their previous activities and ethnic backgrounds. Some of these women human rights defenders are actively participating in demonstrations against the restrictions imposed by de facto authorities on women and girls. And also, as well, I can see I'm speaking with survivors of forced marriage by Taliban's militants and women of human rights defenders. When I interviewed with one of them, she is an estimated human rights defender, and also she is a dedicated civil society activist. Since 2018, she has made significant contributions for more demonstrations and advocacy campaigns aimed at combating violence against women and girls. Also, for example, I can say when she was while on her way to a doctor's appointment for her pregnancy checkup, her car was intercepted by the Taliban. She was in Taliban's jails during 10 days. During 10 days, they endured torture and even harassment, Taliban's harassment here. Unfortunately, as a result of so many torture and harassment, she lost her baby. And now she remains under immense pressure and battles with depression as a consequence of this traumatic experience.
Thank you very much, Angela, for sharing about the situation in Afghanistan and also your work to support women human rights defenders there. It's just a tragic and an impossible situation that you are working in. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really, it is really tragically, and also every day we hear so many such news from human rights defender, from women. They always put in jail through Taliban's. Even Taliban sometimes rape them. It is so very bad news. Every day we can hear.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this oral presentation also highlights this situation that is happening to those who are attending and seeing it. Thank you very much, Angela. John.
Thank you so much.
I guess what Angela's work shows and is that even in places where we say, well, we want to shape and change and use law and policy to end sexual and gender-based violence, but what happens when the entire rule of law breaks down and when perpetrators are so powerful, so overwhelming, and no amount of advocacy and pressure can really help, at least through the work internally. But Angela's work shows through the fellowship is that, well, we can't let it go. We still have to document these cases. We still have to lobby the United Nations, members of the international community, regional governments who have the ear of the Taliban, and hopefully through that, try and get women out of prison, move them and relocate them to a place of safety. And I think one other thing that this particular story shows is that the work of women human rights defenders in every part of the world is just not safe. All of those who you've seen, the fellows you've seen, have endured some form of retaliation and reprisal, have been threatened, verbally or physically, for the work that they have done, continue to be threatened for that work. Threats are coming from all different directions, from state organs like the police and members of parliament, but it can also include victims' families, the defendants, their friends and their colleagues, and the community that cannot accept that that's the work that we have to do. So that's why we also have to use the 16 days of activism to celebrate the incredible work of human rights defenders from all over the world who are really, it's such a tiring work. It requires you to be on call 24/7. There is no such thing as a rest. You just have to always be on the ball, responding, advocating, and it gets very tiring when you have to keep fighting for your rights. With this, I would love to bring all of the fellows and Sahar's team back on stage. And we are opening the floor for you all to ask any questions that you may have. We do have about 8 minutes until we have to end this event, but I hope within this time we can allow for some interaction. If you have questions, please put them in the comment section. I can see that there are really incredible comments that have been left by everyone, and thank you so much for encouraging the fellows for their work. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then maybe I'll ask the last question and just have everyone go around and maybe give one line, starting with the Angela. So very quickly, what do you think is the role of a human rights defender in ending gender-based violence? Please unmute yourselves, everyone.
It's not important where we are living. Just as a human rights defender, this is our responsibility to work, to advocate, to be voice of our to be voice of other women. They are still under such threats, and also they have very heavy living. So, so I can say it is very difficult to working in such environment, in such critical situation. We are seeing gender apartheid is ongoing in Afghanistan, but still we are working, and we have so brave women and girls in Afghanistan. Still, they are participating in so many demonstrations against Taliban's restrictions. They that shows they are so brave. No woman, Afghan women don't accept Taliban's restrictions and Taliban's such such everyday's laws and banding. All of them is for Afghan women. And I can say we are trying to show the world and also to other international organization to show still Afghan women are struggling with such situation. And also just I want to say other international organization and authorities, please don't forget Afghan women. Afghan women should be your agenda. Don't forget us, because we are living in very, very bad critical situation.
Thank you so much, Angela. We will, as part of Sahar, will continue to make sure we will fund fellowships for Afghan women, and to all who is listening who want to support fellowships, this is really the place to where you can hear from the fellows themselves. Let me pass the floor to Hagin and Nora. What is the critical role that you are all playing in your work?
In our work, pardon the question.
What is the role that you see yourself playing in your work to end gender-based violence?
Personally, the work that we're doing, we help these victims, and we are so happy that these victims trust us more than they can trust other people. And what I can say is that we should continue this work, as most of the victims, we help most of the victims, and we have their trust, and this brings change to this community.
Thank you very much, Nora. Yourself, Hagin?
I believe as the key liaison persons between the community and the government institutions and stakeholders, it's quite important for us as human rights defenders to also get really to be invested in regards to the capacity that for us to transact whatever we are doing at the grassroots level. And at this juncture, I'd just like to appreciate Sahar for recognizing grassroots human rights activists who are doing small but mighty things within the communities.
Thank you so much, Hagin. The work is all yours, and really incredible work that you're all doing despite every challenge. Thank you. Jimena, what would you have to say about the role of human rights defenders in your work?
Well, it's essential. We have seen that here in Argentina, we need to push all the time the boundaries of our government, the justice, and it requires every step we give it, we see the results. So it's very important, and more in this context in Argentina, we are suffering threats, and you can, for example, have a high profile, or for example, the feminists, the lawyers, and the journalists are suffering a lot of threats and a hostile environment in their networks, or they receive a lot of complicated situations, and that reinforce the needs to be pushing this kind of work, because human rights are not are flexible. I mean, it has to do with the public policies, so it's necessary our work, and it's essential to keep on this direction to change the reality of all the victims we are trying to help.
Thank you so much, Jimena. Passing the floor to you, Isabella, for your last remark on the really remarkable importance of human rights lawyers and defenders.
So I think for us, human rights defenders, they are quite critical, because that is the one network that you find across the spectrum, from the grassroots all the way to the government officials. And for us, they are important because through this network, they provide a safety net for them to continue holding states accountable, which is something that a majority of us might not be able to be in a position to have. But then this network is able to provide that safety net for them to continue pushing back the government, holding the government accountable, and lastly, being able to provide information and platforms for people across the spectrum, both men, women, girls, and boys, to claim their rights and access justice.
Thank you so much, Isabella. Passing the floor to Catalina from Colombia.
I think that we can use and have to use our knowledge, experience, training, and background to encourage all the people around us, and also to be involved and to use the platforms that we have and that we are allowed to use to bring more cases, to raise the voice for those who cannot speak, and together as Isabella was saying, to have accountability, and also to spread hope and to share our experiences as a good cases, as good experiences to show that we can do it and everybody also can. So that is, it's not impossible, but it's quite difficult in the way that we are trying to. But yeah, so don't lose the hope.
Don't lose the hope. Very good. Thank you so much, Catalina. Passing the floor to Lara.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that, to continue working with Sahar, for example, for me, and to give women and underrepresented people like a platform to make a change, and especially if we want to have more justice, more accessible justice, and to help victims of SGBV to have inclusive leadership, and so that we can continue to do the work that we do.
Thank you so much, Lara. And now, finally, I'll pass the floor to Sarah to wrap up the event, and then we will call it a day. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for being here, all of you. And we're really overwhelmed by all the positive response. And it's very important that you are with us at the very beginning, the onset of this accelerator program. And we're so happy you met all these fellows. And really, it's our dream that we can reach many more fellows in the future, have a much bigger cohort, and present them to you and to the world. And we are so happy to have so many new faces and new names here. So if you want to connect with us, you have our emails, you have our website. We are so happy to have conversations with you all. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you as all this the past month and today also. And thank you, Natasha, for being this incredible, inspirational leader for all of us. And I'm so happy, and thank you. And we hope that you enjoyed this today. Thank you so much.
Wishing all of you a fantastic day, afternoon, night, wherever you are. Thank you all for your participation, your insights, and your incredible passion and hard work.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.